Welcome to Cheats Masters, a collection of raw, unfiltered stories about love, deception, and heartbreak, where every truth cuts deep. My name is Alan. The sound of a key turning in the lock at 3 a.m. should have brought comfort, knowing it was my fiancée returning home. Instead, it marked the beginning of the most devastating night of my life, the night that ended our engagement just 4 months before we were supposed to stand together and say, "I do." Jennifer and I had been together for 3 years before we got engaged. I truly believe those years had been building towards something permanent and beautiful. We first crossed paths in a cozy downtown cafe, where she was sitting with stacks of papers to grade. Jennifer taught 4th grade at Lincoln Elementary, and I remember teasing her about how perfectly color-coded and organized her grade book was. That tiny exchange sparked something that grew into a relationship I thought would last forever. With Jennifer, everything felt promising. We shared the same dreams about family, careers, and the kind of future we wanted to build. She was brilliant and compassionate, and her laugh had a way of lifting me out of even the toughest days. I worked as a project supervisor at a mid-sized construction company, overseeing residential builds across the metro. My unpredictable hours and demanding schedule had strained past relationships. But Jennifer was different. She seemed to understand. She never complained when I worked late or had to leave town for emergencies. Instead, she packed lunches for me, sent encouraging texts when deadlines got stressful, and listened attentively when I talked about my projects, no matter how mundane the details were. On the 3rd anniversary of our very first date, I proposed her back in that same cafe where we'd met. When she tearfully said yes, I was certain fate had brought us together. We set the wedding for following spring, far enough away to plan properly, but soon enough to avoid dragging out the wait. The engagement period felt like everything I had ever wanted. We spent hours dreaming out loud about homes, kids, and the life we would share. Jennifer dove into wedding planning with her usual meticulous energy, spreadsheets, schedules, and neatly arranged checklists. Everything ran smoothly under her direction. We agreed not to move in together until after the ceremony. Her little bungalow in Riverside was perfect for her solo lifestyle and close to her school, while my downtown apartment kept me near work sites. Both spaces were fine for one person, but too small for two, and saving money separately made sense. We poured those savings into wedding expenses and house hunting, touring family-friendly neighborhoods, browsing 3-bedroom homes with 2-car garages, imagining decorations and children filling the rooms. It was fun building that dream together. Our routine was simple, alternating weekends at each other's places. It gave us closeness while still keeping independence until marriage. But about 4 months before the wedding, something shifted with Jennifer. At first, the changes were so minor I dismissed them. She started declining weekends at my place, saying lesson plans or wedding prep were overwhelming. That seemed reasonable. Planning a wedding can be draining. But soon, her excuses multiplied. School obligations, last-minute deadlines, extra responsibilities. Jennifer was a dedicated teacher, so I brushed it off initially. Still, it became harder to ignore. Where she once went out of her way to make time for me, she now seemed to avoid it. When I offered to help with her workload, she waved me off, insisting she needed to handle things alone. Even her communication began to fade. The woman who used to send me warm, thoughtful texts now wrote brief, flat messages. Our phone calls grew short and impersonal, often ending abruptly with her distracted by something else. I felt her slipping away, as though the person I planned to marry was being replaced by someone distant. When I asked her outright if something was wrong, she brushed aside my concern, insisted it was just a busy season and things would soon settle. But then came the part that stung most, her social media. There, she wasn't busy. She had time for dinners, outings, and events I hadn't even heard about. When I asked, she brushed them off as school functions or last-minute invites with friends. And that was when the doubt began to grow. The breaking point came one Friday evening, roughly 3 months before our wedding. I had wrapped up work earlier than usual and thought I'd surprise Jennifer with her favorite takeout. Pulling into her driveway around 7 p.m., I noticed her car was gone and the house sat completely dark. With the spare key she'd given me, I let myself inside. I called her, expecting she'd explain she was running late. When she answered, Her voice was hurried, breathless, and in the background I could hear the hum of voices like she was surrounded by a crowd. She told me she had rushed to Springfield because her aunt had suddenly been hospitalized. The explanation sounded reasonable enough. Family emergencies happen. I told her I understood, wished her aunt a quick recovery, and she promised to keep me updated, though she wasn't sure when she'd be back. What I didn't tell her was that I was already sitting in her living room. Something in her story didn't quite fit, but I forced myself to trust her. Instead of leaving, I stayed. I ate the food alone and decided to spend the night there waiting, hoping she'd message me with updates. But the hours ticked by in silence. By midnight, unease had settled in. By 3 a.m, my suspicions were confirmed. I heard a key sliding into the lock. Jennifer stepped through the door and froze. Her face drained of color the instant she saw me standing there, like she had come face to face with a ghost. Before I could speak, a man's voice drifted from just behind her, casual and familiar. "Babe, who's that?" And in that moment, everything shattered. She hadn't been in Springfield at all. She had been with another man, a man comfortable enough to call her babe. Jennifer stood speechless, caught between us, unable to come up with a single explanation. She was dressed in a revealing outfit I had never seen before, clearly something chosen for a night out. There was no mistaking it. This wasn't a one-time mistake or a lapse in judgment. It was a calculated betrayal, one that had been going on for months. Every excuse about long workdays, extra school obligations, or stress had been nothing more than a cover for her affair. I didn't wait until morning. I gathered my things immediately. She tried to stop me, reaching for my arm as I walked past, but I stepped away from her touch. Passing the man who stood awkward and bewildered, I left without a word. He seemed only then to realize the weight of what his presence meant. As I walked away, I knew there would be no wedding, no future, nothing left to salvage. The woman I thought I would spend forever with wasn't who I believed she was. In the days that followed, Jennifer flooded me with calls, texts, even showing up at my apartment and job. Her excuses shifted constantly, contradictory stories filled with half-truths. One moment she claimed the man meant nothing. Another time she insisted it had just been a friendship that went too far, and then she promised she'd end it if I gave her another chance. But the lies about her aunt, the growing distance, the intimacy I'd witnessed, all of it proved the opposite. She minimized it, insisting we could move past it, that marriage would fix everything. But my mind was already made up. Her deliberate dishonesty showed a side of her I could never overlook. Ending the engagement was brutal. Canceling the venue, informing guests, returning gifts. Every step was a painful reminder of the life we had imagined and lost. The hardest part was returning the engagement ring. It had cost me months of savings, and it symbolized a commitment that no longer existed. I exchanged it for a watch instead, something to remind me I had dodged marrying someone who didn't deserve my trust. The emotional wounds lasted far longer. Betrayal at that level leaves scars that cut deep. I turned to therapy, where I learned that Jennifer's lies weren't a reflection of my shortcomings, but of her own. Counseling helped me realize that her ability to compartmentalize and deceive was part of her character, something I could never have controlled. Some people are simply skilled at hiding their true selves. The biggest lesson I carried forward was this. Ordinary relationship challenges can be worked through, but deliberate dishonesty and character flaws cannot. If I hadn't uncovered the truth before the wedding, our marriage would have been destroyed eventually. Looking back now, as painful as it was, I'm strangely grateful the truth came to light when it did. That sound of the key turning at 3 a.m., a moment that should have been comforting, became the turning point of my life. It saved me from a much bigger disaster. That night taught me something unforgettable. Sometimes the most life-altering truths reveal themselves in the instant between a key in the lock and discovering who's really on the other side. Jennifer wasn't the woman I thought she was. And as devastating as that realization was, it spared me from the biggest mistake of my life.